Hi, my name is Brandon, and over the past year, the Delight Cafe team and I have traveled across the U.S. researching this rapidly growing industry of CBD products. What we have found throughout the industry were products that were inconsistent in dosage and used ingredients that weren't even lab tested. Products with chalky textures, bitter aftertaste, and worst of all, confusion among the CBD consumers. That's why we created Delight Cafe. A 15 milligram lab-tested, all-natural, water-soluble hemp CBD powder pack. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Add it to your favorite drink of choice, wherever, whenever, on the go. Quickly find your calm, your balance, and your delight when you need it most. Hi.
Oh, it's Dave Brown and Brian here at Victor Tango Show. We're here today to bring another great episode from the Victor Tango crew. We're here to lift you up, talk a little bit about veterans issues, and today we're going to talk about my story a little bit. Brian's going to ask some questions and dig it a little deeper for you guys, and we got our friend Britt who's watching in the background too. We might bring her on for some questions as well. But just wanted you all to come on in, hang out, and sit back and relax. We're going to start with a little video that I'm going to share with you that was done a few years back about my story. And we'll go with a little bit of that, and then we'll get into the show and start chit-chatting. So just give me a minute here to start getting into this, and we'll get going. How's your day been going, brother?
Been a long, hectic day, but it's a good day.
It's a good day. That's good.
It's kind of fitting that I'm actually sitting right across the street from Marine Corps Air Station, Yuma, Arizona, right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm sitting here watching the military planes going in and out. It's pretty cool.
Well, here we go. We're going to start this video off. Ready? Let's do it. Is it working?
Seemed to be. Did you do the audio button?
I did, but it didn't seem to hear it. So we're going to try this again. All right. Here we go.
There we go.
Rocking.
Dave is an amazing father, but it was hard for him.
I couldn't keep a job more than 3 or 4 years at a time. So that starts to eat at you as a failure. And so then you turn to alcohol. And then you come home and get yelled at because you turn to alcohol. And you just kind of go in the cycle. And it just gets worse and worse.
He constantly would fight often those demons of what he went in the military, and the drinking helped to numb his pain.
I felt unwanted. I was embarrassed, shamed. I felt like I should be able to change this, but was given up. I was even starting to believe that Kim and Tyler deserved better than what I could give them. They'd be better off if I was dead. It finally came to a head. I'd been out, just was dealing with a lot of stuff. I was 38 and not where I want to be in life. And I'd been struggling with my job, making ends meet, and I just blew it off going home and went to the bar.
And he came home and he was drunk.
Kim told me that she needed to go. She couldn't handle this anymore. She said she might come by the next day or we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I said, there might not be a tomorrow. I said, I got a gun here, right?
I told him, don't do it. Just go to bed, sleep it off. He said, I can't anymore. And when he told me that, I knew he was in trouble.
She got off the phone with me and called the police. Thankfully, they showed up at the house. I knew that I needed to get on my knees before Jesus, let him know that I'm broken. I can't do it without him, and that I need help. I just gave it to God.
Dave gets out of bed in the middle of the night, drops to his knees at the side of our bed, and starts praying.
I prayed that he would make me a better husband, a better father. I prayed that he would help me with this addiction to alcohol. And I just felt so relieved and calm. And I felt unashamed. I felt like a brand new person.
I began to see change. A lot of change. Dave became committed to our family. He was there. He was engaged with our kids and me. And we started going to church. And we found Maple Grove Covenant Church.
We'd listen to the pastor speak, and we'd both walk out of there. And on the drive home, we'd look at each other and say, can you believe what he said today? Every time that we went into that church, we got something that we needed that week. We thought that the pastor was either bugging our house or following us around town. God was delivering a message for Kim and I to hear every Sunday because we'd asked him to put our lives back together. The transformation of our family has just been incredible.
Watching this transformation happen with Dave and see it start to happen in our family, I knew that I was really the last piece. I needed to make that connection and have that relationship with God.
It was the Sunday after Mother's Day. Pastor Craig gave this amazing sermon. I asked God to be my Lord and Savior that day right there in church. I saw what was happening in my own family, and that transition for me and my own personal relationship with God and seeing it with Dave and our family has been very profound. We couldn't do it alone. We needed.
So that's a little bit about what's going on in my life and how I transitioned and what helped me after I transitioned from the military. So I went to church and was able to find God and find Jesus, and that's what I needed to help me in my path and in my trajectory of where my life was going during that time. What do you think about that video, Bri?
That was pretty intense. It's amazing how many of us kind of go through the same things and deal with the same thing and don't even realize it, you know.
That's crazy, isn't it?
You know, there seems to be I'm not into numerology or don't really even know that much about it. There seems to be something significant with that 38 age. because that's how old I was when I hit my breaking point, had my lowest time there. So that's kind of curious. I wonder if there really is something to that.
About how many of us that have that breaking point at that age?
Right.
I think, is that long enough for us that we've been dealing with all of this for so many years that you're finally enough's enough. You know what I mean? And you're drinking and trying to self-medicate and get through the day and get through life. And you just get to a point where I don't want to be this guy. This is not what I signed up for. And the only thing that I'm causing is pain for everybody around me. So, logically in my mind at that time was, hey, it's time for us to end this and move on. And, luckily I had a strong woman by my side, and she contacted the authorities, and the authorities showed up and were able to help me and get me some help. And that's what started the trajectory of moving forward in my life, was that intervention at that time. Now, did that stop me completely from drinking right away? No. Did that stop me from having problems? Did that stop me from having issues with moving forward and dealing with daily crisis? No, I still have those. But it did start that trajectory of where I am today. So
thank God that happened. I do have a question for you though. When your wife called law enforcement and they came to check on you, how did that go down? When they got to your house, how did all that play out?
Well, the door was unlocked from my wife leaving. It hadn't been locked, and they showed up and just came through the door, and they came upstairs, and obviously that commotion startled me, and I stood up, and they came, running right up at me, and they were like, hey, they wanted to help. And that's what the sergeant that was there was, the person that was a calm voice and saying, hey, we're here to help you, buddy. Let's get through this. Let's get you some help. And was really able to talk me down and get me to go with them. And they brought me to by ambulance to emergency out through the emergency department at the local hospital, and then into the psych lock area for a 72-hour hold. So it wasn't what do I want to say, adversarial as what happens a lot of the time. So I had somebody who knew what they were doing a little bit. So
that's outstanding. That's what I was wondering about. Is it seemed that's one part, at least when I was in law enforcement, that you didn't really receive a lot of training on, was how to deal with someone like that. And
right.
every situation is different, but that's, as a law enforcement officer, that's one of the most dangerous situations you can walk into, is when you have to approach an armed suicidal person.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, it was my experience that someone that is suicidal, when you show up there as a law enforcement officer, and that gives them another alternative to doing it themselves. We used to call it suicide by cop, and they would escalate the situation until, you're left with no choice, but basically do it for them. And that's an area of law enforcement that I think needs to be looked at and kind of revamped. I believe that should be part of the training, is being able to deal with someone that is like that. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think that is something that is really important for them to do. I know that here in Minnesota, that in the Twin City area here around Minneapolis and St. Paul, that they are starting to do some of that as part of their training and ongoing training, is to be able to deal with veterans or people with mental health and crisis, and which is great to see. And they're partnering with the VA and stuff like that to be able to do that. But yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to have so many brothers and sisters that have taken their own lives for this to be something that they're going to look at and actually work on and do. So, you know, I want to go back and just talk a little bit about my story. So, served with you. I got out of active duty in April of '93, came home, and I had already had a child, and I got married. And, you know, that first 6 months, 8 months of being home was extremely difficult. Realizing that people around me didn't really understand me or know me anymore, and didn't have that level of trust with them. Felt all alone in the world. Even the gal that I was going to marry didn't feel the same as before. And I was just going through the motions at that time, just what I felt that I should do instead of what I wanted to do. And not saying that I didn't want to get married. I'm just saying that I just felt that way. Like I was just checking boxes and, you know, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to do, just to make everybody else comfortable and happy around me versus trying to take care of myself. And I found that that was difficult. And so the more that I tried to do that, the harder it became on me. And so the more difficult it became, the more I started to rely on alcohol. Now, that wasn't hard to rely on alcohol, because when we were in the service, it was readily available. And our motto was work hard, party hard. And something that we did quite a bit. And so the one thing that I want to talk about is, you know, I understand, you understand what it feels like to be in that situation, to be at that doorstep where you're making that decision in your head that the world is better off without you. And because of the problems that you're getting by not being able to reacclimate to society, not being able to trust those around you, making poor decisions because you're drinking, all of that kind of stuff. You know, I want to be able to talk to people about that so that I can stop them, or maybe intervene in their lives prior to getting to the point where you and I have reached in the past, and be able to do that. So that's why I wanted to show that video today and talk a little bit about what my past is like.
Yeah, and you know, it's not an easy thing to talk about, you know, and it's especially that first time, you know, the first time you actually start talking about your problems and your past and what you've gone through. I mean, it's the best thing you can do, but it's the hardest thing you can do. And you know, I really applaud you for that video. I thought it was very well done, and it definitely tells a story. I wasn't really quite expecting that. So
churchy for some folks, but that's part of my story. It's part of my ability to come back and continue to live my life. That's what's part of it is for me. Our friend that we met last night, Aaron Dave Smith, no one would ever know your personality, or by your personality, that you went through all that. Thanks, brother. Appreciate that. It's been many years of living and working on it. I appreciate you, though. Had a great time.
I think we have Dave all frozen up.
Last night. There we go. We're back.
Yay.
Yay. Britt, are you there? Yep, she's there. Okay. We're all here. We're still going away. We're still plugging away. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about, is just my story. So, some of the things that I had done or was a part of when I was in the service helped create some of these issues for me. Well, one of the things I want to talk about too is I don't know if you've ever heard of the ACEs test. Have you ever heard of an ACEs test? ACES test?
I have not.
So an ACEs test is adverse childhood experiences. And so what that does is when you sit down with somebody for a mental health examination, they have you take this inventory of things that you might have experienced as a child before you were the age 18. There's 10 questions, and in those 10 questions, there are things like, in your family, did you have somebody who was ever arrested? In your family, did you ever have somebody that drank or was on drugs? Did you ever have somebody who went away and was incarcerated for a period of time? Did you ever experience any physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse? All of those types of things from anybody close to you. So that's one thing that they started using to evaluate where people have been or what they've been through in their life. If your parents have been divorced, those types of things. And when I did the assessment for myself, I had 8 of them that I could qualify for that I experienced as a child. Now, that's quite a bit for somebody out of that assessment. So then you take that person, myself, and you add a serious car accident where I had head trauma and I smashed through a windshield at 16 and pushed the dashboard into the car. And then 18 going into the service and being cleared to be there and do that without any intervention or anything for anything that I've dealt with already prior to my beginning of my life. And they're starting right from the get-go, the high stress of boot camp, the high stress of the drill instructors in your face, the might is right mentality where you're, if you mess up, you get the crap beat out of you. If somebody messes up around you, they get the crap beat out of them by you. And you're there to police your own people, your own squad, your own fire team. And the only way you do that is physical force. And you can attest to that during your time that was the case when you were in boot camp too, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And that's, that's exactly the problem, is that mindset, that constant, the violence, the stress, things like that. So, and then being deployed, being in harm's way, being on a ship, being told that you're going to not be able to head home right away. You're going to be diverted to another hostile environment, and you're not going to be able to hear or talk to anybody until that's done and we're able to be released to move on to somewhere else with no communication. Those types of incidents, man, just made everything really difficult when I came home, because all of that baggage I'm carrying inside. And so with all of that, I come home and then continue to create more damage because of what I had, because there was no time spent with me to mentor me with somebody or to go through an evaluation of any sort, or because we weren't talking mental health back then, right?
No, not at all.
We were just working on, I don't have any bullet holes. I must be okay, right? I don't have any limbs missing. I must be okay, right? I don't know what's wrong with me. So that's the mentality that we work with. So anyways,
it's funny that, I mean, the terminology that they used, I mean, after World War I and II, it was shell shock. And then, Vietnam, they came up with the 1,000-yard stare. And, when did they actually start using the term PTSD?
I think that was in the late 90s is when that term actually became more mainstream, was around that time frame. And they moved on from the shell shock or the 1,000-yard stare or fog of war. That was another one, the fog of war.
Yeah.
So to be able to talk about those things, and those people that were in those home in their communities that were labeled with those things, those people were the drunkards or the crazy people in the town, right? The town
absolutely.
At the time, during that time of whatever era it might have been. Well, I don't know about you or me, but that's probably pretty accurate when you talk about where I was at that point. I was probably pretty crazy. Not to say that I'm not now, but I was probably pretty crazy at that time. So crazier than I am today. I mean, I've learned a little bit. I've grown a little bit, but just getting a little Delight CBD going here. So anybody, we want to thank Delight CBD for sponsoring our show. We do actively use the product. Just want to have a little bump because a little anxious. So I just want to have a little something to take the edge off.
Yeah, I have mine in my coffee. So.
All righty. So what questions you got for me, Brian, for my past? What do you want to know about my past?
Did you ever get arrested for any of the, as we put it, the stupid shit that we did when we were younger?
Oh yeah. Are you talking after service?
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I separated from my first wife in 97. Got a DUI in 98. And then within a year, I got a second DUI. And they told me if I got another one, it would be a felony. So try to stay away from alcohol at that point. But it was during that time that I actually met my second wife, and I had something worth fighting for. I felt that was a purpose. I had found a purpose, a little bit of a purpose anyways, to try and change my life a little bit. So, but it wasn't until later that it really took hold. So, but yeah, DUIs, no fighting ones. So.
That's something else, you've already got the weight of the PTSD on you and dealing with that. And then, I got very fortunate that I didn't have any legal issues. I actually went the opposite direction and, wore a badge for quite a while afterwards. And, I used to tell a lot of guys the only difference between you and me is you got caught and I never did. And,
right.
But, I knew a lot of veterans that, same type of deal. I knew one guy, I think, he had probably 9 DUIs, he actually did a stint in prison, and he just couldn't leave the alcohol alone. But he was a Vietnam vet, and that was how he self-medicated. He just used alcohol constantly, and then he had the legal issues to deal with, the legal expenses. He wasn't supposed to drive. That was part of his other problem. He wasn't the kind of guy that would call someone up and say, hey, I need to go such and such place. Can you take me? No, he's like, screw you. I'm still going to drive. I own a car. Then he gets in trouble for driving on a suspended license. And, it just snowballs and just keeps going and going and going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even being arrested and being convicted of a DUI, they take your license away for 30 days for your first one. And I was still driving. And what's a cop going to tell me to do? I served this country and fought for this country and whatever. What's a judge got over me? And so I drove. I got pulled over once too, without when I was supposed to be in suspension, and the cop pulled me over and he's like, "You're not supposed to be driving," and I'm like, "Nope, you got me." So he let me pull up the street and pull over and lock the truck up and called somebody to come pick it up, and he gave me a ride home, which was pretty cool. But because I wasn't too far from home at the time, but yeah, but didn't follow the rules. The rules were made for me.
Yeah,
kind of the mentality of the Marine Corps a little bit.
So when you did you ever go to AA meetings?
Yes, I did.
Did they help you?
No, they did not. And the reason why I say that they didn't help me is I was in a room full of people that were alcoholics. I'm not saying that they weren't, but they were angry about being alcoholics and angry that they couldn't drink. And, there were some guys there that had some time of sobriety, and I'm talking, 15, 20 years of sobriety, but they were angry about it. And I'm like, man, if it's going to make me that angry and crabby, I'm just going to keep drinking. I don't want to be that guy. Aaron has a comment here. I have a very nice guitar. I want to donate to Victor Tango for you guys to give away to anyone you choose. I'll mail it out this week. Aaron, thank you, brother. Awesome. We'll definitely find a veteran to send that out to. We really appreciate that for that gesture. Love you, brother. Thank you. That's pretty awesome. So
that gives me an idea.
What's that?
We need to find an artist that can do a little bit of paint work on that guitar, and then we can raffle it off and donate all the money we make from the raffle tickets for our event coming up in July in Florida.
Hey, that's not a bad idea either. That is not a bad idea. That is not
I like it.
A bad idea. That's so nice of you, Aaron. You rock. You do rock, Aaron. We love you, brother.
Yes. I can't wait to get those guys back on here. That was a good time last night.
I know we're going to have to get them on this show so we can talk a little bit about freedom and being a patriot and loving our country and all that kind of stuff. So definitely great people to be with last night. And if you missed it, yours truly co-hosted the 8 show on the Delight the Light Cafe station. So if you guys missed it, it's a great show. Go take a look at it. Aaron had some of his artists come on with us, and we were able to get a sample of what their music is like, and it was a great time. We had a great time last night. Wanted it to go on forever, but you can't. I mean, you got to eat dinner, and you got to do other things too. So
yeah.
But back to our stories and my story. When we're talking about this stuff, what I want people to get from us and get from this installment of the show or this episode of the show is that when we're talking about these things, we're not coming across, or we're not somebody who is just wanting to help but doesn't have the experience the experiences or the understanding of what you're going through. I want people to understand that been there, done that, got the t-shirt to prove it. You know what I mean? So
I don't have my shirt on, but I got my cup.
there you go.
I think this would be a good time to bring Britt on and let her ask you some questions from a civilian aspect.
Well, let's see if she'll come on. There she is. Hi, Britt.
Hi.
Oh, you had it on mute, did you?
Dude, I didn't want to interrupt you guys talking.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
I've been writing down things as you guys have been talking.
Oh, wow.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
I know, right? So it's probably all going to be put into like one question, but you were talking about mental screening almost. Like you never had any kind of screening prior to going into the service.
Correct.
And do you know if they have something like that put into place now? And I think it's actually pretty important that they would do some kind of screening for someone going into the service because it's hard. It's a hard job to go into mentally, and you should be mentally stable to go into something like that. I would assume. I don't know if you know of any kind of screening that goes on prior to getting into the service now, even to this day.
I am only aware that if they have a known condition already diagnosed, that they have to do an evaluation for that to be able to get a waiver or be able to be accepted into the service. I'm not sure if they have changed that in the last couple of years to where everybody has to go through that. It would make sense if they would change it to that because that's something you have to do when you join the police force or, Secret Service or FBI or CIA or DEA or Marshals or anything.
Anything with the government.
Yep. You have to go through all of that. So you would think that they would do that. I'm not sure if they've gone to that level yet, but it would make a lot of sense if they did.
Well, you're screening every other government employee, but the ones that go into the service, and that's interesting to me that they wouldn't.
Well, let's be real about what mental health is and talk about how the government didn't realize how big of a problem it really is, and that more people out there have mental health issues than what they anticipated being the numbers. And so instead of only a couple out of 100 having mental health issues, it's more like 40 out of 100 have mental health issues. So now you're looking at having to change things that that weren't there before. So you have to come up with new processes and new procedures. What they need to do is they need to figure out where the numbers are. And we do know that, depending on your upbringing and your financial status and, even some of the ethnicity stuff, they've been able to trace and create where you're more likely to have mental health issues, but they haven't gone to specific for service. CK Ford says that there were screenings and psych evals when she entered. It was required for those undergoing background check for security clearances. That was 1988 when she entered. So that was for people for security clearances. But if your job didn't include a security clearance, then it wasn't the case. So that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense for that if it's a security clearance thing. So, but having a security clearance, they determine the level of security clearance you have by whatever your background check comes across too. So
Dave and I served with a Marine that back then, I don't think any of us really knew what was wrong with him. We knew he wasn't right. After going into law enforcement and dealing with people with mental health issues and seeing some of these things for myself, now, I would almost guarantee this guy was probably schizophrenic. I think he probably had paranoid schizophrenia, but he's one of them. You're not screened for that. But he used to hear voices. He used to talk to people that weren't there. And, he did a lot of really weird things. And even when he would do something really weird enough, somebody would generally say something to someone in our command that, this guy probably has an issue. And, well, like we've said 100,000 times, mental health is, you don't bring that up. So it just got swept under the carpet. And
well, it seems like when someone has a mental health issue, they want them out right away. Almost. Like they don't want to deal with it. You just need to get out. Almost. So they find a way to get you out. Like from the last episode.
That depends on how severe the mental health issue is. If it's something where someone is raising, if they're bringing it to more than one person's attention, or it's something that, a commanding officer is going to hear about and say, what the heck's going on with this? Well, then, get this guy out of here. If it's something someone has, but they haven't really done anything and it can be ignored, then they're going to choose to ignore it every time.
Oh, that's sad too. I mean, like in the broad scheme of things, if somebody's having issues mentally, why would you put them in the danger of going out in the field where they're going to get messed up more? It's mind blowing to me that we would ever put somebody in that situation to be forced almost, like, here, put you out on the line, even though you have some problems going on in your head right now, whether it be minuscule or not. I mean, something like that, where you're like putting them in the line, that's crazy to me. Like, you don't mess with people's brains like that. But maybe it's just me.
we're talking about, this is back in, the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And so we weren't really talking about mental health, number one. Number two, we were Marines. And so as a Marine, you're taught that you don't show your weaknesses. And then let's talk about toxic masculinity. Being a Marine is the epitome of toxic masculinity. You're the best of the best as a fighting force in the world. And so when you talk about that, nobody's going to come forward and say, hey, I got something wrong with me. I know I'm seeing people that aren't here, and I'm talking to people that aren't real. Those types of things, you're not going to bring attention to that unless it's really happening. And because you'll definitely be singled out or definitely have problems with getting along with people around you. And this person did have some of those problems because it happens so much. So it was ignored. And so those people were sent out and they were in the field. But that's back then. Today, I would like to find out what they're doing more to stop that from happening. Are they waiting for somebody to actually say it themselves that I have a problem? Or are they actually taking the word of somebody around them and saying, hey, this guy's got some issues going on. Maybe we should get him evaluated and, see what's going on with them. Or are they just sweeping it under the rug and let's get him out of here as fast as we can. The people of the command that know that person or him or her. So I don't know. That'd be interesting to get somebody on here that could talk about that in current tense of where we are.
Right. And it's almost interesting too, because even throwing someone out in the field who is mentally stable, you're throwing them out there like on the front lines, and they might not come back the same. And I feel like they don't do what they're supposed to do, like a debriefing. That's one of my things on here. Like, you went through being thrown into there to change your way of thinking about life in general to an environmental change. You're not at home anymore. It's not somewhere where you feel completely safe, but you do have your brothers and everybody around you, so you're safe, right? So it's a complete environmental change. And then they're like, okay, go home.
Yeah.
Like, there's no debriefing on, like, what you've been through is not normal. So it's almost like they change your way of thinking to go through, and then they don't change your thinking back to what it should be, almost, if that makes sense. That's
Right.
the way that I see it.
Yeah. So you're saying that they build you up to be this fighting machine, and then they don't take the time to show you how to turn the switch off, and then be able to go back to so-called civilian normal life.
Right. And
Right.
you can't do that either. Like, you can't just turn someone's switch off. Once you change a way of thinking, like, you can change it to a certain extent. That's how I feel. Like, you can change your way of thinking, but there's always still that past too. So you always have that, like, inkling of what's going on in the background, almost. I don't know. That's how I feel.
The human brain is the ultimate hard drive, because once, and especially how they do this in boot camp, once they break you down and turn you into what they want you to be, that's permanent. It's not like a computer where you can go in and take a component out, put a different component in, or, it's not like building a car motor and saying, well, I don't really like this manifold, how it's performing, so I'm going to switch it out with this one. Doesn't work that way on humans. Once they build you, that's who you are.
Right. There's that little part of you that's always going to be that person. So to program someone to go from being 18 years old, like, your mind isn't even fully developed at that point to understand the things that you're going to be going through. It's so interesting to me that they don't do anything afterward, because you can go for 10 years, you could go for 5 years, you could go for the rest of your life until you retire. That programming doesn't essentially get turned off.
Right.
It's hard. It's a hard thing to almost grasp, even for me, because I'd like to think that, like, yes, you can change your way of thinking. If you just change your mindset, you can change your way of thinking. But that, you guys have been taught and programmed for protection. That's different.
Yeah.
That's totally different.
Yep. I want to read this from CK. It says a lot of the things that get ignored are those who commit domestic violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, etc. Many of those things used to get swept underneath the rug, and then the perps were slapped on the wrist, and their victims would get scolded, blamed, and berated for reporting the issues. So that's, another thing that would come up in some of those evaluations for security clearances. And so, she brings up a great point. Why are they even allowing them to stay in service with that too? You know what I mean? But you look at it, it's more of a good old boys club, and that's kind of what it is. And that's kind of, we go back to that toxic masculinity. I mean, we could talk about toxic masculinity for hours and hours. I mean, if you don't know what toxic masculinity is out there, Google it, research it, find out what it is. It's being a man that doesn't show feelings, doesn't cry, and is always right. Their way of thinking, all that kind of stuff. And so caveman days kind of moving forward. So take a look at it.
You want the ultimate example of that, just watch A Few Good Men and watch Jack Nicklaus's character, Colonel Jessup. That is the epitome of that.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
I think I've met some men like that too myself, unfortunately.
You weren't supposed to say that about me.
I'm sorry.
No, but like you're
So
saying,
go ahead.
you
Go
know,
ahead.
so they build us up like that, but there's nothing to take that program Marine or program soldier and take that training back and take it out of them, process it, learn how to come back from that, find tools to be able to change your way of thinking, of being on guard, of wanting to always check your surroundings and make sure that you're safe and all of that kind of stuff. Because even today, I've been out since the Marines since 1993 off active duty. I still look around everywhere I go. I always have to sit with my back facing a wall or somewhere, and I can see the entrance and exit. I'm always evaluating everybody who's in there. I can't have a conversation at the table for very long without hearing something at another table that I'm interested in, because a couple's arguing or two guys are getting loud or someone's had too much to drink. I'm always surveying what's going on around me. And so I don't know how you could take all of that out of somebody either and make them normal. So that's another challenge.
That's what I was just going to ask. Do you think it can be unprogrammed, or just to a certain extent? Is talking about it with other vets, is that like the best way to kind of unprogram it? Or I don't know, can you think of a way to unprogram that to a certain extent? You're not going to get rid of it all, right? And I think it's almost good that you do survey a place. Like, as a woman, if I had a man that surveyed the place and didn't want his back to the door, like, I feel like that's him protecting me to make me safe, but it's to a certain extent.
Right. So for me, and I'll let Brian answer this too, but for me, I assess everybody that's there, and I look at the ones that are going to be the most challenging to overcome. And the reason why I do that is because I want to know what kind of level of fight I'm going to have to put in the dog to get through if something happens. And it's like General Mathis said, who was the commandant prior to the one that we have now in the Marine Corps, said, be happy to meet everybody and shake their hands and be pleasant, but also have a plan to kill them. And that's kind of the mentality that you have, is you're constantly thinking of ways that you can come out successful if you ever get into a situation like that. And so you come out of the military, is that a real way of thinking? I mean, is that a normal way of thinking out in the civilian world? Are you walking around supposed to be evaluating everybody around you and having a plan to kill them all? It sounds crazy.
I think normal is like evaluating people, but not evaluating to kill, like just in case. Like, there's that cutoff where it's like normal to a certain extent.
Yeah, I can understand that. What do you think, Brian? Did I hit it on the head or what?
Oh, absolutely. And I know for me, mine actually got worse after the military, because I did go in law enforcement. When you're in the military, you pretty much, for the most part, what your enemy looks like. When you go into law enforcement, everyone's your enemy, because a lot of people hate cops out there. A lot of people just hate that badge. So your enemy's a lot more disguised. So you spend even more time, evaluating what's around you and who's around you, and which one do I take out first if I need to, and so absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to read this from CK too. She said, right, they program the people for the use of the machine being the military, that then unable to deprogram the same soldiers to operate as good civilians. A lot of deprogramming comes through therapy. And then she also said, you nailed it, Dave, when it comes to explaining that. Go ahead.
but you're already programmed that like you're the best of the best. So why would you go to therapy?
That's exactly the problem.
And that's we've hit on that before, is that's part of the problem with guys, you know, even if they do go to the VA or go to a civilian doctor to try and get help, and you know, the first question they've got for that therapist is, you know, number one, did you ever serve in the military? Number two, what did you do if you did serve in the military? You know, number three, have you ever been in a combat zone? Because you know that I don't care how much training they've had, if they haven't experienced that, haven't been there, they're never going to have a clue what you've gone through.
Right.
Right. And that's why I've always said, I'm like, if you just have a vet to listen to a vet, like that's the best therapy that you can have. Somebody that you can talk to who's been through it, or just somebody sometimes to listen. I don't know if that would have helped you guys, just somebody with an open mind to like help you. Like, hey, I might not understand what you're going through, but I hear you. I hear what you're fucking saying. Excuse me. But I don't know.
God,
Everybody
I've never
wants to
heard
be
that
heard,
word
right?
before.
I'm sorry.
My virgin ears.
I'm so sorry. You guys have been in the military. You've heard that. Come on.
You know, and here's the thing too, is, you know, people got to understand that when you're in boot camp and when you're in the service, you're trained to go from walking down the street, happy-go-lucky, to turning it on like that, to being as angry as you possibly can be, so that you can get to that level of hate and fight, so that you can do what you need to do. So we're not talking like you got to work yourself up to it. We're talking like somebody tells me I got to run over here and I got to take care of this. I got to go take care of this. There's no sitting around waiting. Let's debate it for a little while and we'll figure it out. You know, well, let's just wait a little bit. No, it's immediate response to force. And that's what we're trained, is immediate response to force with the same force or more to conquer the situation.
That's why rules were not made for you guys, right?
Right. Rules are not made for us.
Perfect example of
We
that,
make the rules.
That's one of my things. Rules were not made for me.
We're sitting on ship, you know, it might be 10 o'clock at night, you know, we're sitting around just playing cards or something, and then that general quarters alarm goes off that we're under an attack. And, you know, you go from sitting around in your underwear playing cards with your buddies to, you know,
fully dressed.
10 seconds later, you're in combat mode.
Right. Yep. Fully dressed and in combat mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when that alarm fires, we're going.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's understandable. I mean, you almost have to be in that mindset when you're there. It's just turning it off when you're out is the kicker there.
It's making the fight or flight response normal and always ready, so that any situation you can handle it.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yep.
Here is an interesting question for you, Dave. My question I wrote down is, have you ever felt that you were a purpose to live for? Because you had specifically named your wife as you found your purpose to live for your wife, right?
Yep.
Have you gotten to the point that it's you that or are you still working on getting to there? And no answer's right or wrong. I'm just curious.
Right. No, I'm at the point now where I'm worth living for. So yeah, I get that. There's days where it's a struggle still, but there are going to be days.
Yeah, it's helpful to have somebody there that can motivate you on those days that you're not feeling it for you, right?
Exactly. And you know, for me, it's my time, like every morning in the Bible and doing devotions. That's my time with God, and that helps me get prepared for my day. And then it's my wife. She's there for me, and then I've got some really good friends that I call my my board of directors that I can share things with and have conversations with, that I trust enough that I can tell them how I really feel and what's really going on with me. And you need people like that in your life, because without people like that, you have to deal with it all up here all the time. And all up here for me all the time is not a good thing. And
I don't think it is for anybody.
Yeah. It creates a lot of more problems.
Well, then you start overthinking about stuff, and it's just, it is. It's a lot of stuff to deal with on your own. So
it is. CK said, when one knows that they have severe PTSD, therapy can be quite helpful if they get connected to the right clinician therapist. And then she said, going from 0 to 220 miles an hour is our specialty. Yes. In the service, that's exactly what it is. And that's what they need from you. You're going to be possibly or likely, depending on branch of service, are going to be in a situation where you're going to be asked to protect something or someone, or up to and including war. And how are you going to react to that? What are you going to do? And that's exactly what it's for. And you are a weapon for the government. That's basically what you are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just sad that they don't de-arm or pull the safety back up when you guys come back. You know what I mean? Turn that safety on so you guys can get into a clear headspace. Just don't release you to the wild. Because I totally get, mine's in a totally separate way. I'm a recovering addict. So for me, I felt like nobody who's never been an addict will ever understand me, right? For you guys, it's nobody who's a civilian will ever understand me. So there's that connection. I still get it. I get where you guys are coming from, but it's just in a different way. That makes sense.
Yep.
So,
yeah, totally,
and that's what I want people to know is just because we're a civilian, which I am, doesn't mean I don't understand that disconnect, because I've had it just in a different way.
Yep.
So there are other people out there to talk to. And I want to make that clear to anybody out there. You have to be comfortable with who you're speaking to. I think it's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And people who have been through, areas of combat or those types of situations, it is more acceptable to talk to somebody who has been there, done that. And so, because they know that you've experienced the same or very similar circumstance than what they are working through themselves. And so that gives them the ability to open up and share. And I agree with you. Going through addiction and recovery from addiction is a huge, huge thing to go through as well. It's hard as hell to get out of. But yeah, you go through some of the same things as the separation and the isolation and all of that stuff, and understanding how you have been pushing people away from you and how you've been hurting people around you. And yeah, you can relate to that part of it for sure. No doubt in my mind, no doubt.
I can't relate to it all. You know what I mean? But there's little things that sometimes are big things to people too. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally agree with you. And, and that's a lot of it too, is that's why veterans rely on things that start to get harder than alcohol when they get back, is because alcohol becomes the thing that just doesn't do it anymore. So then you start getting into other things. I just saw an article yesterday. It was shared with me from my sister that they're doing a study now of using MDMA as trial veterans with PTSD. For people who don't know what MDMA is, it's ecstasy, and they're starting to use that in clinical trials for people with chronic PTSD to see if that helps. There's a world famous gentleman. His name is Bob Parsons. He's the guy who started GoDaddy and now is the owner of Parsons Golf, PXG. He was interviewed in the article, and he takes psychedelics daily for his PTSD. And he's a Marine from Vietnam. And he talked about how important it is. And he's given $7 million to the research of that to help other veterans. So, trying to find a way to help people live a better life. And it's never going to be what society calls normal. It's not, but a better life than what you've been living because of the circumstances that you have. And I whatever it takes for people to get through the day and still want to be there the next day. That's what I'm looking for. So I don't know about you guys.
We just had a guest on Job of Delight last Friday that talked about the psychedelics and all of that. And he's actually created a gummy that has microdoses of the mushrooms in it. And I actually just ordered some of that last night. I wanted to give it a try myself. So
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, remind me later, and I'll shoot you the website that he has. But they talked about that on the show last Friday. The microdosing, the use of ecstasy, and all of that. So,
and that's whatever it takes, and that people get so hung up about drugs and like marijuana, CBD, gummy, whatever it takes for somebody to be able to feel good should be acceptable. Now, I'm one person, I'm one person that's been diagnosed with chronic PTSD, but really, why do we have to fight this? Why do we have to make it such a big deal for veterans or such a big fight for people to get what they need? Instead of filling them with these man-made narcotics and chemicals that they are way too happy to prescribe and have you become addicted to. So, yeah, we could go on a whole rant on that. So don't keep me started with that. But yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about. Let's just do what we can to make people happy so that they are happy. And
to a certain extent,
yes,
there's always that cutoff line. You know what I mean? There's a difference between an addict or becoming an addict because you're addicted to stuff than trying to help someone get to a place where they can mentally prepare themselves to become themselves, if that makes sense. Yes. I don't know. I hope I hit that one.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Not to overdo it, and be able to use it in a manner.
Sometimes you need the help. You need the help to get where you need to be to become yourself.
Correct.
We don't want to overdo it.
Yeah. Don't want to get to the point where you're a zombie.
Right.
It's the same principle as drinking, though. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a couple of drinks, just kind of calm your nerves, relax. But when that 2 drinks turns into, 2/5 of Jim Beam or, 2 cases of beer, I mean, yeah, that's when you need to.
That's not just calming your nerves anymore.
Yeah.
It's not?
No.
Oh, Aaron says
therapist here.
Aaron says, I have to run, y'all. Enjoyed it. Catch the rest later. I appreciate all 3 of you for what you do. See you, brother. Look forward to staying in touch with you. I want to get you on this show too. We'll see you.
Thanks, Aaron.
But yeah,
Yep. See you later, Aaron.
I just don't understand the huge fight when we're talking about these things, especially when we're talking about people like veterans who have PTSD from serving the country. Why do they have to fight so hard for you to help them, number one? And number two, why do you make it such a huge fight for them to get what they need medically, medicinally, whatever it is that helps them be the best them, so that they can enjoy their life instead of isolate and run away from society. With that, I'm going to tell you a story that just popped to mind. I used to be in sales, and I would go all over the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then I also traveled to other states. But I got a lead that was up about 2 hours from the cities, the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, to meet with a veteran and meet with him at his house. And I drove up there, and I pulled up to the house, and the house had not had anything done to it in probably a good 10, 15 years. The paint was peeling off the outside of the house. All the drapes were pulled. They were the sun blocking drapes. And you could see that they were discolored, like from smoking or whatever in the house. So they were that grayish brown / that used to be white or cream. And you couldn't tell if anybody was in there or not, dark, whatever. So I went in and knocked on the door, and the gentleman opened the door and invited me in. And he offered me a seat in his living room. As we were walking into his living room, he had his couch, he had his chairs and love seat around a round table. And he had it in a circle, just like a foxhole. And that's where their center of their life was right around that table. Everything was right around that table. And I tell you, that guy felt like he was in Vietnam still. And he was a Vietnam vet, and he never came home. And that's smokes. I mean, they very, very, very rarely left the house. And, for cigarettes and food is probably all they left the house for. And otherwise, that's where they lived their life, was right there in that space. And I just thought, man, I don't ever want to get to that point. I don't want to ever get to that point where that I'm doing that all by myself or with my wife. So, but yeah, that was crazy. And why hasn't anybody offered the guy help or that kind of stuff? I talked to him a little bit about that day, but just meeting him, it was difficult for him to open up and talk to me. But yeah, there has to be somebody in their community that could reach out to them and help them.
How old did you say they were?
They were Vietnam era. So
okay.
They were in their 70s,
they're almost,
60s.
Yeah, they're almost set in their ways at that point. That's going to be a hard one to break. You know what I mean? Because I know people who have not been in the military that are almost that way. They're almost instilled in that way of being at home. That's your home, right?
Yep.
And they don't like to go out for anything but food. So like, man, throw in being on the front lines and being in Vietnam. I couldn't imagine trying to even trying to change their mind on that. That's going to be a tough one to break.
Oh yeah.
That's like that veteran I met in Michigan a few weeks ago, right after we started this, and Vietnam era veteran. Not that, race makes any difference, but he was a black man. So, being in the Detroit area, he may not have the resources, or have the people around him that can give him advice. But as I'm talking to him, he's telling me he did not even know until 2014 that that the VA even existed, somewhere where he could go to get help. And 2 years ago is when he finally started seeing a VA therapist for his PTSD. And this is a veteran that was in Vietnam in 1969. So, 50 years without help that he's lived with that.
Oh yeah.
How is
Yep.
there that disconnect? Like, there's already a disconnect from you're a U.S. government employee to you have to serve this much and done all of this stuff and have to have your proper paperwork to even touch the VA. There's that. It's such a disconnect that there's like people just don't know.
Well, when you're talking about Vietnam era, you're talking about guys that were drafted into the military. And we're talking that judges were even sending people, instead of going to jail, they were going to the military and going to war. Instead of going to jail and serve a sentence, they were test your luck over in Vietnam. And if you live, you live, right? And so for the mindset, if you think about this, you have a government that drafted you. You didn't want to go. They forced you in, and they sent you over and put you in a situation to fear for your life. And then you came back and nobody liked you because you were forced to be a part of this, which we were protesting here crazily about these people going over there like they volunteered, and not many of them volunteered. They were drafted. And so they feel like their government set them up, and society shit on them, and that they were left alone to fend for themselves. So why would they trust another government agency after that? And so, I mean, I understand that mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's difficult. I mean, think about that. How
That
extremely
makes sense.
difficult that would be if you're forced into it. You know, they weren't sold a bill of goods that weren't delivered. They were forced. You know,
Right.
Some of us were given promises to, you'll get this, you'll get that when you go in, or, but these guys were just forced to go. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. You're in. And I don't know. I would find that extremely difficult to be able to readjust or deal with when I came home.
Yeah, you're completely right. And it totally makes sense as to you're thrown in, you're forced in. Why would you trust the government again in any agency? I get that. Totally get that. I'd be the same way.
I look at my circumstances for when I got out, and I wasn't really proud of my service or being a Marine until probably just about 10 years ago, because of all the trouble that it had caused in my life for so many years, and why I was self-medicating and everything else. It was hard to be proud of that. So, but I'm back to connected with the guys that I serve with, and that's been a blessing, and been able to, work through some of the PTSD stuff and able to move on. And some of those people can't do that. So if I was that guy back then, this would be a different story we'd be talking about. I wouldn't be right here, right now. I'd probably be in a foxhole style living room somewhere as well. So hunker down. So what you got to say, Brian? You're just sitting there like, or you froze?
No, I'm good. It's just amazing, there's a lot of things I hate about social media. Sometimes I think I'm just going to get rid of this stuff, but at the same time, it's reconnected so many of us, and it just goes to prove that not all technology is bad. We're getting old when we start talking about how technology is bad, but I guess we really are getting old.
We are getting old. I know. My birthday's on Tuesday, so
Happy birthday.
Yep. It'll be
It's gonna be 57.
No, we're gonna be 20. Gonna be 28 for the 24th time. I'll be 52. So yeah, can't believe
At
it.
least you're older than me.
Yeah, whatever. Wiser too.
I have
I
learned
can
now.
argue with that. I ain't
No,
gonna argue with that.
No one can argue with that. The older you get, the more wise the older are. The elder.
The elders are. Yes.
Yeah.
Elders. Ooh.
You know, we all did a lot of stupid stuff back in the day, but yeah, I got to give Dave credit. There was, I remember a few specific situations where, he had the opportunity to do just as stupid as shit as I was doing, but he chose not to. So,
Yeah, I made some good choices. Not very many of them.
I think we all sit there.
I definitely have had my share of bad choices. But yeah, I mean, we could look back and there's some great things that happened, I'm sure, that I just don't even remember too, from all the stuff that we did. They're the best memories I forgot, you know what I mean, from the days that we were back there. I'm just glad we don't have video to prove the stuff that we did, because holy hell, that would be.
I missed that era too. That was like right after me.
We would be, yeah. I mean, you talk about going viral. I mean, that was some stupid stuff we did.
Right.
Not just viral. You talked about, there could have been prison time involved. Some of the shit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There's no proof. There's no proof.
There's no proof. You can't prove it.
Statute of limitations is up. Yep.
We're good.
We're good. Yeah. No one's going to jail tomorrow or tonight. Yeah, I'm going to cross our fingers. I don't need to cross my fingers. This statute of limitations are gone. So, yeah. But yeah, I just hope that what we're doing here really helps. And I feel that it is. I really appreciate, this opportunity for being able to bring this to people's awareness. And, talking about this kind of stuff really helps me too, because we can laugh about it. We can make fun of ourselves, because that's part of the healing process too for me. So I enjoy that.
Absolutely.
It looks like Britt froze. So, well, I don't know about you, brother, but I'm getting tired talking tonight. I'm about ready to head. So, what do you say?
Yeah, unfortunately, I my day's not even close to being done, so I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna go find out why I'm being held up here.
Yeah, go figure it out, right? Why haven't you been on the road?
I'm gonna do a couple of packets of delight to calm myself before I go off too bad on somebody, and I'm gonna go try and get some answers.
There you go. Bob stopped by. He said, "Hey guys, I only have a couple minutes, but wanted to stop by and to say, hey Bob.
Hey Bob, how are you doing tonight?"
He wants to know where you're off to next, brother.
As soon as I get out of Yuma here, I'm headed back to Kansas City, and then from Kansas City, and turn around and head for Oregon.
Well, keep us updated on how you're doing, brother. And I think we're going to call it a show. It's great to have you on here with me today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for participating. If you have any ideas about a topic on a show, or maybe have a question of resources or things that are available out there, please hit us up on our Gmail account, which is Victor Tango Show at gmail.com, or you can find us on Discord. And that's coming up here. There's the link. You can get that from us as well, just by reaching out by email, and we can send that to you too. That link for you to be able to join us on Discord for conversations and also for games and movie watching and stuff like that. We goof around on that a little bit. So I'm going to add Britt back so she can say goodbye. So,
Sorry.
and thanks for joining us. And we appreciate you being on the show with us today and helping us keep it moving. And we're going to say goodbye. You got any parting words you would like to say?
Oh, just be safe out there. That's all. I have nothing profound right now. I have already lost my mind because my phone died on you guys. So
I tell you, seriously. All right. Well, thanks for being here, you guys. And I'm going to end this show tonight. Thank you for joining us, everybody. For those that are watching us on YouTube after this has been done live, please give us a like, give us a share. We love you out there, and hoorah!
Hoorah!